Welcome to ATB-TV. I'm Darren Dance here with Peter Morganti on location in Ballarat, and today we have a very special guest, one of the most promising young trainers in Victoria. I'll call you young, Matt Cumani. Welcome to ATB-TV.
It's great to be on, guys. Thanks very much. It's a very kind introduction. Hopefully we can build on that sort of promise.
Well, we're dragging trainers into the 21st century by getting them on Zoom. For some, we've had to text them how you spell Zoom, but we're going all right. So you're the first cab off the rank, Matt. And
oh wow!
Well, you've got to be very, very happy with the way you're going in terms of churning out the winners. You know, you must have had to buy a bigger wallet.
I don't know about that. It's a tricky business training where you seem to struggle to make any money at all. But that's not the aim of it for me. Certainly in this first few years, it's not really to make a profitable business. It's really just to try and get as many winners as we can and as top a quality of horse as we possibly can. So it's great to have teams like ATB on board as well, who give us a horse each year. And you know, we haven't found that Group 1 winner yet, but I'm hopeful that it's soon to come.
Matt, how long have you been in Ballarat training?
Basically 5 years now. I started in 2016, so a little bit short of 5 years.
Tell me, you're a third generation trainer from your family, steeped in history. I've met both your mum and dad. They're quality people and very good horse people. And I've met that sister of yours, Francesca. She's all right. She's not too bad. She seems to know a little bit, probably not as much as you. But tell me, growing up in Newmarket, training there and being part of it there and coming to Australia and settling in Ballarat, how do you describe the difference between Newmarket and Ballarat, from a training perspective?
Yeah, well, look, it's difficult to describe it without sounding like I'm too nostalgic about England, because Newmarket, really there's nothing quite like it around the world. There's 70 kilometres of gallops there, all sorts of grass surfaces, all sorts of different surfaces, polytracks, sands, wood chips. You've just got a wealth of different options there, and it's quite beautiful as well. You know, the stable my father had, which unfortunately sold when he retired last year, was built in the 1890s, that parts of it. So it's steeped in history. And so to come here, which is a relatively new nation in itself, and also a relatively new racing nation, even though it's been going on for a long time as far as sports go in Australia, it is quite a difference. But the reason I came here is precisely because of that. So that while it lacks a little bit of that sort of ancient history, if you like, it's a very promising, very forward-looking, progressive industry, and one that's hugely exciting. I mean, I think whether it's by design or by luck, but each of, as you said, I'm the third generation of trainer in my family. Each one has moved. My grandfather was a champion trainer in Italy. But my father saw an opportunity in England and thought it was going in the right direction versus Italy. He moved to England and had a fantastic career there in an industry that was thriving. But England, to me, a bit like Italy, seems like it's struggling a little bit. They lost their opportunity to make money, so prize money suffered, and as a result, I think it's suffering a bit of a slow death. Luckily, it's supported by some very wealthy, very successful owners and a deep history, but it's struggling. And I think I've made the right move, to be honest, coming down here in a nation where really the sky looks like the limit for racing on a global scale. I think Australia is very, very promising, and I'm delighted to be here.
We're very lucky to have good prize money. It's interesting hearing you talk about Newmarket. Lucky enough to have been there 3 or 4 times, and I don't know, I think if you live in Australia, you look at the Newmarket Training Centre and you go, wow, wouldn't this be good to have? And I think if you're training in Newmarket and you come to Australia and you say, wow, look at the prize money these guys race for, we just don't seem to have it all, do we?
I know, but I think that's what we should work towards in Australia, because we do have the prize money, and that's the hardest thing to get. Like, England sold itself out to the bookies, unfortunately, in the 60s and 70s, and so for them to try and claw that back is going to be almost impossible. I just don't see how they can what they can do in the future. Whereas here we have the opportunity. We've got fantastic prize money. We have a bit more control of the industry ourselves. We've got the land. There's no reason why we can't create a Newmarket style training centre here. I've come to Ballarat, and it's as close as we get, but it's still, there's still plenty to do. And Australia is absolutely huge. I mean, you can't tell me that there's not somewhere that racing Victoria or in New South Wales that we can secure and have acres and acres of gallops and every sort of choice that we could ever want as trainers. I mean, I know it is expensive, but it's things like that we can certainly work towards and are achievable in my mind.
Yeah, I think it's all about the horse, isn't it? Keeping them happy, keeping them content, but getting them out of their box for 2 or 3 hours, in the morning. It's a different system.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah. We often talk about it here. A lot of my riders are European and have had careers in Newmarket before, and we talk about the differences, and there are positives and negatives. I mean, you as a trainer, you have to adapt to your area and where you're training, and horses are very, very adaptable, and that's the beauty of the animal. But you can always dream and always have the perfect spot if you work towards it. And there are certainly positives we can take from both styles of training in Australia and in the UK, and that's what I plan to do over the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully.
I think it was back around April, you might have mentioned to me that the way you're training now was completely different to the way you started training when you turned up in Australia, and that you're either going to soar to the next level and get a heap of results, or you're going to fall off the fence. Well, you've certainly spiraled out of control. What do you actually put that down to? What did you actually change, and why are your horses going so well, and why are you winning races week in, week out?
Well, I think first of all, it's huge support from owners. We started with a lot of horses that had careers previously, and people were just looking for an edge, maybe a slightly cheaper trainer somewhere, something slightly different, just to see if they could eke out a bit of improvement. And invariably, unfortunately, you can't. There's nothing like previous form as a guide to future form. And no matter who you are, even if you have the magic touch, I think it's very difficult to expect to suddenly turn horses around that have had 30, 40 races and expect them to suddenly grow another leg. In fact, I think in most cases you just can't. It's not necessarily because of the training methods, obviously, that they haven't been performing. It's because they are not good enough for a start with most horses, but also because the more races you have, the more training you have, you develop problems and issues and little things that maybe aren't enough to stop you racing, but certainly will make you sore and arthritic and will diminish your ability. I think with training, you learn all the time. I think my father, even the year before he retired, he was learning still. Every horse brings a new challenge, and I think the minute you stop learning is probably when you stop improving as a stable. So you have to keep adapting, and with every horse you learn a new thing, and then there are always new challenges as well, new surfaces. The Ballarat put in the polytrack here, and that certainly has brought with it a lot of benefits, but also a lot of challenges. You suddenly find you have what used to be a common injury, let's say an injury in a hind leg, you suddenly get more suspensory injuries, let's say, with a different surface, and they're not insurmountable, but you need to be on it quite quickly. You need to be able to try and spot patterns early, and the quicker you pick up on those, the quicker you can adapt and slightly change your training methods. And I think all those little things can work towards producing more winners, getting better strike rates, and then that in turn gets you a few more horses, probably a better quality of horse. You can be a bit more confident by going to sales and buying a more expensive horse perhaps. And also you get more confidence in what you're doing, and you can argue positively, of course, with your owners about, which way you want to go, which direction you want to take. You can be more confident about stepping up in distance, even if it seems to contradict the pedigree. All those things I think you get better at as you go deeper into training. And I think the first 5 years, even, I've had a fair bit of experience in training, working for different trainers around the world and watching my father do it as I was growing up. But I think there's nothing like actually doing it. And particularly setting up in a new country that I'd only been in for 8 or 9 months. The first couple of years was always going to be a question of feeling my way a little bit. Having a core training model that I was going to more or less stick to, but changing the odd little thing here and there until I was happy with it. And we're still changing everything here and there, but the core is actually still quite similar. I haven't changed a huge amount, really. I mean, I know I possibly said to you it's the way I'm doing it is completely different, but it's more to do probably the management of the step than actually the training. And I think I'll continue to keep changing it, I think, until the day I drop, hopefully.
Yes. Tell me, we're in the midst of COVID-19. Is that you, Pete, talking?
Yeah. There's two sets of legs.
We can't go to the races. You haven't got owners at the track. You haven't got owners in the stable. You haven't got owners at the races. It looks like we're in for a long haul with this, but what's the impact been on your business?
Well, I mean, we were faced with two scenarios at the start of it. Either continue more or less as normal with a few changes, or I could see in 2 or 3, 4 weeks we were going to be bankrupt. Because if we'd had a shutdown of racing, we would have found it, particularly in the first. At the beginning of the COVID problem, no one really knew how it was going to play out. We didn't know whether a stage 4 style lockdown would last for a couple of weeks or months or years. And so I think we were faced with the possibility of having an empty stable with horses gone out to the paddock. We've got 27 staff here, and we wouldn't have been able to pay them. We literally go from week to week from when we get our invoices out and bills paid. That means we can pay our staff, and hopefully in time we'll have a bit more cushion. But for now, we're a young stable and we have zero cushion. A lot of things are done as lost leaders, just to try and get us on the map, so to speak. And so it was going to be a disaster, to be honest. But thankfully, the Victorian government and around Australia have seen the case for and racing put the case forward for keeping it going, and thankfully it's meant that we had some of our best couple of months in the last 2 months of last season, and we would have missed out on that had it been shut down, and we probably wouldn't be operating today had it been shut down. So really we've been very, very lucky, and I'm very thankful to everyone who's made it happen. And I'm hopeful that this latest outbreak doesn't change things, because if we can keep it going through the spring, hopefully we can come out the other side and still be in a similar position.
On a more positive topic, can you tell me who's your favourite horse in your stable?
It'd have to be Serious Deal, probably. I honestly, he's look. I don't think necessarily that best performer means favourite horse. Although I think a horse like Quay Quay is certainly close to my heart, because I bought him myself at the Melbourne Premier Sale, and he wasn't an expensive horse, and we've got a great group of a sort of mixture of owners in, all with majority of them with small shares, and he's a horse that I've sort of been looking for, and I needed to show that I can train a 2-year-old and a 1200 metre 2-year-old, not one that has to run over 1800 in the dying days of the season, and that we're not just a stable of stayers, particularly in Australia where the majority of races are at the shorter distances. A horse like Quay Quay is hugely important for us. But the Serious Deals of this world, I really like them as well, because he's just a real trier, that horse. He's not top class. He's not the sort of horse that can win you Saturday races once a month. But he's pretty consistent in his work. You always know what you get from him in the morning. He eats up at night. He always looks great. He's always got a good coat on him. He's sort of well produced, well reared, and I'd like to think well trained. And although he's been frustrating recently through no fault of his own, but mostly through the barrier draws and the ground and everything, when he goes to the races, you can pretty much always rely on him to put in a good performance. And those horses make your job pretty easy, really. And so, while my favourite might be Quay Quay, there are a handful of horses like Serious Deal, which certainly make my job easy.
What about jockey? I wanted to ask you who your favourite jockey is. Pete wants to know who you've barred.
Yeah, barring might be. I take a slightly different approach to jockeys than I think a lot of people do. In that I rarely really slag them off. I rarely give them a hard time. But on the flip side of that, I rarely give them a lot of credit. So, because for me, I'm all about the horse. The horse is what's important to me. And I think, when I see a top jockey winning on, a horse that's going to be winning Group 1s in the future, and he's winning his 78, and they're talking about how, what a good ride it was. Well, I think that was all horse. It wasn't, anyone could have won on it. So I probably don't give as much store to jockeys as they maybe some might argue they deserve. But that means that for the positive of them is that I won't slag them off too much. I think what's really important for me is to develop a good bond with the jockey. And that's what we've done recently with Fred Kersley and now our apprentice, Jaden Lloyd. They come in and ride gallops in the mornings. They start to get a feel for all the horses. They get a feel for me and what I want from them, how I like my horses ridden. And I think that really pays dividends. And I don't say to my owners that they absolutely have to have my jockeys on at all. I'm more than happy for them to pick their own. But I think if you look at our results the last, this past season, Fred's ridden a huge amount of winners for us. He's not getting many other rides. There was a bit of a viral voicemail, I don't know if you heard it, of Tony McAvoy's once giving him a really hard time after a bad ride. But they're all open to bad rides, aren't they? We can all have a bad day. But I think if you have that consistency and you give your jockey confidence by not switching him off the first time he has a bad ride, I think, you can see, and we saw with Fred, they'll put in some really good performances for you. But the trouble and the danger for Fred is that, it's linked. His performance, given that he's riding almost exclusively for us at the moment, is linked heavily to our stable, and all stables will have peaks and troughs of form. So when we're going well, it's great for him. He's riding lots of winners, but soon enough, and I'm sure it's around the corner, we're going to hit a bit of a trough. And as some of our horses go out and the spring starts and the better horses come back, and we're going to have a period where perhaps we're not getting as many winners, hopefully just a month or so. But for Fred, it's going to be a little bit difficult because he's not getting as many outdoor rides as he ought to. And then I'm sure the owners will start to question whether we should be looking at other jockeys or not. But I would certainly fight for my jockeys, because I think, I haven't picked them at random. I've liked what I see in the way they ride, and I like their attitude. They listen to me and listen to the horse and ride very well. And I think then all they need literally is experience and confidence. And you can build a really good team and a good rapport and get the best out of horse and jockey.
Can I cut in here? Hold on, Darren. I'm just feeling like a clown in a sideshow here. I just thought I might add something to the interview. Hey, is Jaden intended to you, Matt, you're saying, as an apprentice?
Yeah, he's actually still on loan from David Hayes, but at some point he'll probably come over to us full time, I'd say. Yeah, he recently fell off and broke his pelvis. I think it feels like it was only 4 weeks ago, but he's back riding again. I don't know how he's done it. He's obviously got jelly bones, but he's prepared well. And I think he's a very good natural rider. He's got a really good feel for a horse.
Yep. No worries.
Tell me, if I said to you, you can have the Golden Slipper or the Melbourne Cup, which one would you take?
It'd have to be the Melbourne Cup because, my father tried to win it and came very, very close on a couple of occasions. So I'd like to just get that before he's training horses up in the sky. So it'd have to be that one. But a race like the Golden Slipper would be very close to my heart. Mainly more from a business point of view, funnily enough, rather than a racing purist point of view. I just think it would do wonders for the brand. But my interest is certainly, that's probably wrong to say. I think races like the Melbourne Cup are more interesting, I think, because they require a little bit more nuance in both the training, but the tactics of how you race them and the approach to the race. And sprinters, I hate to say it, are more easier horses to train because the trick is get them fit, keep them sound, and then do very little with them. And then it's just down to how the race unfolds and how the horse is on the day and who's the best horse. But I think stayers are a bit more tricky. You've got to be careful not to overwork them, but you can't have them going in there, undercooked, so to speak. They're doing more miles, so they have more soundness issues. They take longer to get to their true potential, which means you've had to use them up a little bit more. So again, soundness comes into it. I think just more goes into it, and therefore the rewards are that much greater and more satisfying when you do get a victory.
Yeah. You there, Darren?
Are you likely to have a Melbourne Cup?
I've got a couple of horses sort of going that way, but it'd probably be a fair stretch to think that they might get there. But a horse like Credence or Future Score, they're really nice horses. They look like they'd stay that sort of distance, although they haven't been tested over it yet. So I wouldn't rule it out, particularly this year when we might get less internationals. But I think probably it's going to be unlikely. I think they're both nice horses that will do well during the spring. But to go into Melbourne Cup, I think, it's such a difficult race. And it's a bit of what I was saying earlier. You really need a Group 1 weight for age horse that's not exposed himself yet. You need one that's on his way to doing that, but hasn't shown anyone he is that yet. So they're hard to find.
Yeah, definitely. Pete, you're going to talk about the Stratum Star that we give him, Matt.
Yeah, I'll just go back to your staff, Matt. I was surprised, 27 staff members. Obviously, Andrew's a great right-hand man for you. Your staff from 5 years ago to now, obviously, it's been always a topic that it's hard to get staff. You've had no worries there, and there's been an improvement from day one to now with, reliable track riders, etc.
Yeah, I think so. I'd say Andrew's probably the only one still here that started with us. But until recently, a fair few of them were still here, funny enough. But Andrew's actually moving on now. He's setting up his own training centre in Stawell. Yeah, a sort of pre-training and training on some deep sand up there, natural deep sand. So wish him the best of luck. And it will be a shame to lose him because he's been absolutely instrumental in helping me set up the business here. But he's ambitious and good at what he does and was always going to be going out at some point. So I expected it, and now's probably as good a time as any. But it's still hard finding good staff, finding good riders, and we've had to rely on internationals a lot, which I think is a symptom of the fact that, racing in its current form and the way it's heading with this sort of prize money is still relatively new here. So I think that actually if we organise ourselves properly, we can encourage more people to come into racing and more riders and jockeys, etc. So I think there is potential for our staffing levels to improve, our quality of staff to improve. But I'm pretty happy with my team. I mean, it's always changing, evolving, and that's the nature of it. You've got a lot of young people here who come for a couple of years and then go on to other things. And so it's hard to sort of build that main core, but we're certainly working towards that. And I think I'm pretty happy with our team at the moment, and we'll keep improving it.
Excellent. As Darren mentioned, Stratum Star colt that Darren and Liz and the team bred out of Arizona Girl, a mare that we raced 5 or 6 years ago. Exciting to get another one from ATB. Reward for effort, I suppose you could say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm really interested to see him when he comes into the stable. Out of a High Chaparral mare, obviously in Stratum Star, we don't know what sort of a stallion he's going to be, but what a fantastic racehorse. And this horse looks right up my alley, to be honest with you. You know, she won 4 or 5 times, didn't she? And, you know, by High Chaparral, you would have thought that this one by Stratum Star is going to be that sort of middle distance type of horse, but have a bit of speed as well. And you know, that's the sort of horse I'm probably, you know, most interested in. And I think, you know, he looks like a lovely type, and I'm looking forward to getting him in the stable.
Yeah, and thanks to you, I've sold a couple of shares recently, but we've still got 35 to 40% to sell. So if anyone's interested and you want to join a team that's firing, and, you know, this is his first crop, Stratum Star, and like you said, a great racehorse. Yeah, and hopefully the blend with Arizona Girl and yourself, and we can have a high-class city-winning horse, which would be great.
I hope so. Yeah, I think we've been building towards it for ATB. I think we're gonna hit the jackpot soon enough, and hopefully it's him.
That's it.
All right, guys. Well, I think we might leave it there, Matt. Gee, I really appreciate you coming on and your time today, and I thought very insightful what you had to say, and I hope our team of viewers enjoyed that interview, get to know you a little bit more. And if you do want to get involved with ATB and Matt Cumani, or if you just want to get involved with Matt Cumani, just give him a call. He's a star on the rise, and we're lucky to have him in Australia, and comes from a great family, and just a gentleman, treats the owners with respect, treats the jockeys with more respect than they deserve, and generally very, very good horseman.
Very diplomatic.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Really appreciate it.
I noticed we never got the diplomatic or the credit with a jockey that was your most favourite.
Well, you know what I'm like with jockeys, right? I might just say one thing. In all seriousness, I think we've got 25 trainers, we've got horses in 25 yards around Australia. One thing, Matt, I do enjoy with having a horse with yourself is listening to your reports on audio. It's clear to me that a lot of thought goes into what you're doing, how you place the horse, where you're running it, why you're running it, why you won't run it, why you'll scratch it. It seems to me you really give a lot of consideration to the horse and trying to make the right calls all the time. And that just comes through in those updates that we receive. So I congratulate you on that, because I'd like to see more of it across the board.
Well, thank you for that. I sometimes worry I might be waffling too much, just a sort of stream of consciousness. But hopefully, if everyone enjoys it like you, then that certainly gives me a bit of confidence to. Well, I mean, I think that's part of what it is for me. You know, we can't. The model in Australia very much is horses have a lot of owners, and as much as I'd like to talk to every one of those owners as much as possible, we just can't. And so I'd like to try in my voice reports, try and pretend as though I'm having a conversation. So I'll sometimes pose questions to myself and then try and answer them, and try and make sure I cover all bases. And I take the view, because I do have some owners that say you go on too long, but I take the view that if I do go on too long, you can always just cut me off. That's the beauty of it. It's a recording. You can always turn it off and come back to it later. But try and give as much information as possible. I possibly, you know, put myself up there to then contradict myself in the future. But that's what training horses is all about. You have to be open to changing your mind a bit. And you know, I might say one day that the horse wants heavy ground and then completely change my mind 2 races later. But I think that's the nature of it.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thanks very much, guys.
What's it like going to the races at the moment? No owners.
Good.
Have I lost you?
Fantastic. It certainly it makes it's. I find myself coming back from the races a lot less tired, put it that way. And that's not to say that I enjoy it more or that it's certainly not better, I think, because, you know, owners are really the most important thing for our stable. But you know, it is quite a taxing day, particularly when you have 2 or 3 runners on a big day in town and you've got a large group of owners there and you're trying to have a drink with as many of them as you can and trying to explain your reasons for this or come up with excuses for that or have a plan for where you're going next. It is exhausting, and particularly when you started at 3:30 that morning. But I kind of love that exhaustion, to be honest, but it's been nice to have a period where it's a little bit quieter and I can go home and maybe not be so grumpy with my wife in the evenings and I suppose live a bit more of a life. But no, I'm certainly looking forward to getting owners back, definitely.
Good on you, mate. A pleasure to have you on board, and we look forward to doing something clever on the track very shortly. All the best.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. It's been great.
Thanks, mate.
Good on you, mate.
Cheers.
All right, Pete. How was that? That was insightful.
Yes, great. Matt's probably still listening now. He's looking for a bit more praise.
Exit button.
I don't know. Who clicks who off
All
here?
right.
See you, mate.
See you guys. We'll try and go to Warrnambool still next week.
Next Thursday.
All right, sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
All
Thanks,
right.
mate.
We'll probably have 10, but we'll probably have to just run him, I think. I think at that point.
All right, mate.
All right, see you guys. Thanks.
Brilliant.
Bye.
Thanks, mate.
All right, Pete. While Matt works out how to exit, he's gone,
Yeah,
I think.
Well, he did it because I didn't know. All good.
Impressive
mate.
young man, isn't it?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you listen to his reports. Is exactly what we got there with his answers. They weren't 10-second answers, thoughtful, and everything you hear him say, he means. He knows that's what he feels, and he realises it, which is great.
I find him in some ways a breath